Hey guys, tonight we drift out beneath a Persian sky so wide it makes you feel like a grain of sand that forgot where it belongs. The wind is warm, brushing against your skin like a slow exhale from the earth itself. You taste dust on your lips, and the horizon glows with the faint afterburn of a sun that refuses to let go. You can almost hear it. Heat sighing across the dunes, daring you to dream of something cold. Because out here, in the middle of a desert so vast it humbles every drop of water, someone once figured out how to make ice cream. Yes, frozen dessert in a land that laughs at rain. And you probably wouldn't survive this journey without melting first. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world we're cooling off together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start walking, sand crunching under your sandals, the moon shining silver on endless dunes. Every few steps, you imagine the absurdity of it all. Someone thousands of years ago decided that life in the desert wasn't hot enough already. They looked at a barren wasteland and thought, yeah, let's make frozen dessert happen. It sounds impossible, right? But the ancient Persians, around 400 BCE, give or take a historian's headache, built structures so clever that they could store ice harvested from mountaintops through an entire summer. These massive, dome-shaped refrigerators were called yakshals, which literally translates to ice pit, and they were monumental, often as tall as a modern four-story building, rising from the earth like clay beehives sculpted like gods who hated sweating. You imagine standing before one. Mud brick walls thick enough to stop a camel's breath, curved like the shell of a sleeping giant. The air inside drops from blistering heat to crisp coolness the moment you step in. A little shiver runs through your spine, not from the temperature, but from awe. This isn't technology from a frozen kingdom. This is desert magic, engineered by patience and geometry. As you move closer, the desert hum fades, replaced by a low, steady stillness. You can hear the faint echo of water dripping deep inside. Somewhere down there lies the ice, the heart of the operation. The Persians didn't just store cold, they manufactured it. Using a blend of mud, straw, wind channels, and the occasional goat laborer, they learned to coax frost into existence. And here's your first quirky fact. Some historians believe they didn't even need mountain ice every year. In the right conditions, clear skies, still nights, shallow pools, they could make ice right in the desert. How? By harnessing radiative cooling. It's the same reason your car roof frosts over while the air still feels above freezing. The ancient Persians simply weaponized it. Imagine a night so still you can hear your own pulse. Shallow stone basins filled with water spread out under the stars. The desert air, bone dry, drinks up every whisper of heat radiating from the water's surface. By dawn, there's ice. Thin, fragile, miraculous. Workers break it up, carry it to the yakshal, and stack it like treasure under layers of straw and insulation. No electricity, no freon, just physics and faith. Historians still argue whether these ice-making basins were widespread or reserved for elite estates. Some say every city had its freezing fields. Others insist it was a royal luxury, supervised by priests who claimed the gods had gifted the night's breath to their king. You can picture it. An early morning procession under pale light, men hauling blocks of glittering ice like sacred offerings. You kneel down now, brushing your fingers through the sand. Even this, the endless grit, played its part. The Yakshal builders used a particular mixture of clay, sand, egg whites, and lime to create a waterproof, heat-resistant plaster called sarouge. It's the ancient equivalent of insulation foam, but way cooler, pun intended. That sarouge coat kept the inner chambers dry and reflective, bouncing away heat like a well-trained mirror. There's something strangely meditative about this. You're standing in one of the hottest environments on Earth, learning about people who refuse to surrender to it. It's the same stubborn spark that drives humans to light fires in rain or grow gardens on rooftops. The Persians didn't fight the desert, they collaborated with it, listened to it, negotiated a truce. A warm gust brushes past, carrying hints of dust, date palms, and something faintly floral, rosewater. You'll come back to that later when dessert enters the picture, but for now, you're still outside, tracing shadows. The stars shimmer above you, scattered like shards of ancient ice across the black dome of the night. You can almost imagine a whisper from the past. Don't fear the heat, just outsmart it. And maybe that's why this story still feels so modern. Even today, scientists studying sustainable cooling systems point back to these designs. Passive architecture, natural ventilation, thermal mass, all of it has roots here. The Yakshal wasn't just a cooler, it was a philosophy built into clay. Still, you wonder about the people who actually worked here. The ones who rose before dawn to chip frost off mountain slopes, or who trudged barefoot through salt plains carrying bundles of straw and buckets of mud. Maybe one of them, somewhere between exhaustion and pride, realized they were part of something timeless, a secret recipe for survival, disguised as dessert prep. You smile at the thought. Imagine explaining your job to someone today. So, what do? Oh, I make ice in the desert. Sure, pal, and I harvest Wi-Fi in the rainforest. The desert wind laughs softly at your joke, as if approving. As you step inside the Yakshal's shadow, the air tightens, cooler, denser, deliciously dry. You breathe it in and instantly feel the contrast. Outside, the heat still rages. Inside, the temperature drops like a sigh of relief. It's not the artificial chill of an air conditioner. It's something deeper, earthier, honest. You close your eyes, listening. Somewhere beneath your feet, the remnants of old ice may still sleep in forgotten layers of dust. Or maybe it's gone, melted into memory. Historians still argue whether any original Yakshals remain with intact cooling pits. Some swear there are, hidden in remote Iranian villages. Others think only the shells remain, beautiful, hollow ghosts of refrigeration's ancestors. Either way, you feel like you're standing at the crossroads of ancient science and quiet wonder. Every detail, the curvature of the dome, the angle of the walls, the alignment with prevailing winds, tells a story of obsession, of people who refused to let the desert decide what was possible. And as the night deepens, you realize something poetic. The same sky that froze their ice is freezing your thoughts now. The stars above aren't just decoration, they're accomplices in the world's oldest cooling trick. You tilt your head back, exhaling into the chill. Somewhere in the dark, a jackal calls out, maybe laughing at you for romanticizing sand and mud. But you don't mind. You're already hooked, halfway between history and dream, ready to dive deeper into the icy heart of Persia. Because the real wonder hasn't even started yet. You've seen the outside. Next, you'll step inside the beehive, into the silent, engineered cool that defied the desert sun. The door creaks open with the sound of warped hinges, and you step into the whistlemaker's workshop, a world so dense with scent, texture, and quiet motion that you feel like you've walked straight into someone's living heartbeat.
The air is thick with steam from a nearby cauldron, carrying the metallic sweetness of melted brass and the sharp tang of boiled bone. You wrinkle your nose. It's not unpleasant, just human in that medieval sort of way. Every smell here has a story, and every object, every scrap of wood, horn, or leather seems to hum faintly, waiting to be shaped into song. You duck beneath a hanging row of drying reeds, and they rattle softly, like bones gossiping about the living. The craftsman, let's call him Tomas for now, because he looks like someone whose name should end with a gentle sigh, moves around you with quiet efficiency. His tunic is dusted with shavings, his hands stained darker than oak bark. He doesn't need to look up to know where everything is. You realize he's been doing this long enough for muscle memory to replace thought. The workbench is an altar to precision. Tiny knives, awls, files, and hand drills lie in perfect disarray, as though chaos itself had agreed to cooperate. You lean closer to a pile of unfinished whistles, each one a little different. Some short and stubby, others long and thin, a few shaped like birds or beasts. Form follows function, Tomas murmurs without turning. His voice is rough, as though it spent more time whispering to wood than talking to people. And sometimes function follows beauty. Depends who's paying. You can't help smiling. The medieval artisan's eternal motto, art meets rent. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind. During the 14th century, craftsmen across Europe organized into guilds. Not just the masons and goldsmiths, but even niche trades like instrument makers. Whistle makers were often grouped under the broader category of woodwind artificers, sharing space with recorder builders, pipe fitters, and organ craftsmen. They worked in tiny workshops like this one, tucked behind markets or within city walls, where sound could test the air before spilling into the streets. But Tomas isn't just making a whistle. He's coaxing a living thing into being. You watch as he drills a narrow bore through a piece of animal horn. The movement is slow, circular, hypnotic. The drill squeaks faintly, echoing the future sound the whistle will make. Every piece has a voice already, he says, glancing at you. You don't make it, you just let it out. You nod, pretending you understand. But maybe you do, a little. Nearby, a small forge glows like a captured sunset. A thin plume of smoke curls toward the rafters, where strings of herbs hang drying. Sage, thyme, and something pungent that might be foxglove or might be yesterday's lunch. Tools rest near the coals, tongs, hammers, and molds that could fit in your palm. Tomas uses a small ladle to pour molten brass into a carved clay form. The hiss as it meets air sounds like a whisper from another world. Bronze sings better, but brass forgives mistakes. You can tell he's made a few. His forearms bear a constellation of small burns, the price of perfection. A fringe tidbit surfaces from the smoke. Some medieval whistle makers believed the best instruments required a drop of human saliva at the moment of cooling, the breath of the maker sealed within. It was said to teach the whistle its future song. Superstition, sure, but the kind of superstition that makes sense when your craft depends entirely on invisible air. Tomas dips his finger in water and flicks it over the brass mold, a faint hiss marking the ritual complete. You wonder if he's heard the legend or if he simply follows instinct older than memory. You drift toward a shelf of finished whistles. They're sorted by tone, not size, an arrangement only a craftsman could love. Some gleam, others are dull and rough. One catches your eye. Carved from pale wood, its mouthpiece shaped like a bird's beak. Tomas notices your interest. That one, he says, was for a falconer. The call is sharp enough to cut through wind. He holds it up, gives a gentle blow, and suddenly the workshop fills with a sound so piercing it feels alive. Somewhere outside, a real bird screeches an answer. You both freeze, half laughing. Still works, he grins. Historians still argue whether medieval craftsmen like Tomas had formal apprenticeships or simply learned through osmosis, passed from neighbor to neighbor. Some records show contracts binding young apprentices for 7 years. Others suggest family trades that blurred into folklore. Whatever the truth, you can see that this craft requires not just patience, but faith. The kind of faith that believes a whistle can bridge distance, danger, even time itself. You run your finger over the wood shavings scattered like snow on the bench. Each curl is thin as paper, smelling faintly of sap. Tomas hums as he works, a tune you don't recognize but immediately want to. It sounds like morning mist in empty fields, like something that doesn't need words. The rhythm of filing, scraping, testing, all part of the same quiet music. You ask how long it takes to make one, and he shrugs. An hour or a week, depends whether the wood is listening. You laugh softly, but he doesn't. Maybe he's not joking. Then he shows you his favorite tool, a small curved knife with a handle polished smooth by years of sweat. Made this one from a broken sword, recycling before it was trendy. You chuckle, but there's weight behind the humor. A sword turned into a maker's blade. War transformed into song. As you watch him carve the edge of a new mouthpiece, you start to see the rhythm in everything. His breath matches the swing of the blade, the scrape of metal against wood syncing with the faint drip from the ceiling. The world outside feels far away. In here, it's all pulse and patience. He gestures for you to try. The knife is lighter than you expect, and the wood resists your first cut, biting back like it knows you're an amateur. Too shallow, he says gently. You're thinking like a writer, not a listener. You pause. He's right. I was trying to impose shape instead of uncovering it. You adjust your grip, slice again, and this time the curl of wood peels away like a secret finally pulled. The air smells of fresh sap. Tomas nods. Now you hear it. Outside, the church bell rings again. Morning or evening, who can tell? Time in this workshop is a loop, circling around the forge's glow. As he sets your imperfect whistle aside, Tomas leans back, wiping his brow. People think we make toys, but these, he gestures to the shelf, are the voices for those who can't shout. Guards, shepherds, sailors, children, all carried a piece of his work without ever knowing his name. You look around the cluttered room, realizing it's more than a workshop. It's a chorus of hands, of memory, of breath-turned artifact. Then he hands you a finished whistle. It's small, smooth, cool against your palm. Take it, he says. Every traveler should carry one. You lift it to your lips, hesitating. Go on, he urges. You blow, softly. The sound is clear, gentle, like morning light through fog. You feel it vibrate in your teeth, hum in your chest. For a moment, you're not just listening, you're part of the craft, a temporary member of a lost guild. He smiles, then turns back to his bench. You slip the whistle into your pocket, heart still humming. The workshop door opens behind you with a sigh of warm air, and the night outside feels different now, fuller, alive with echoes. You step out quietly, the smell of brass and sap clinging to you. And somewhere, faintly, a whistle answers in the distance.
The alley outside the workshop hums with new texture, thicker somehow, as if every brick and puddle carries a fragment of sound. You clutch the whistle Tomas gave you, still warm from his hands, and move through the narrow streets toward the heart of the city. The fog curls like sleeping breath around the torches, muffling even your footsteps. Then, there it is again, a whistle's call, sharper this time, slicing the air like a command. You freeze. That sound isn't art, it's authority. A moment later, a city watchman rounds the corner, his chainmail whispering against leather. He raises a hand in casual warning, the other resting on the short sword at his hip. His whistle gleams at his chest, suspended by a cord. It looks simpler than Tomas's ornate pieces. No decorative flourishes, no bird-carved beak. Just a tube of polished brass, functional and cold. You watch as he blows 2 short bursts, and another guard answers from somewhere beyond the fog. A conversation in tones, perfectly rehearsed. Here's your first historical fact of the night. By the late Middle Ages, whistle signals were standard among European watchmen and soldiers. Long before the shrill police whistles of Victorian London, these medieval versions handled everything from crowd control to curfew enforcement. Picture it, hundreds of people crammed into markets, the air thick with smoke and chatter, and one sharp note cutting through to restore order. A whistle could quiet chaos faster than a sermon. The guard lowers his whistle and eyes you suspiciously. Travelers were always worth a second glance. You nod politely, pretending you belong here. Maybe a merchant, maybe a lost apprentice. His gaze softens. "Mind the bell tonight," he says. "Curfew's close." Then he's gone, swallowed by the fog again, leaving you with that lingering metallic tang of command. As you walk, you start noticing the hierarchy of sound all around you. In one alley, a baker calls his last sale. In another, a priest's chant leaks through church walls. And threaded among them, the piercing authority of whistles, short, long, and steady. They're the city's veins, pulsing with instruction. You pass a wooden post plastered with a faded decree. By order of the council, no tradesman to work past curfew bell. The script curls elegantly, but the wax seal beneath is cracked, a relic of control in a world that never really listens. And then you spot them, a group of guards clustered at a corner, their torches painting gold halos in the mist. You drift close enough to eavesdrop. One of them holds his whistle like a weapon, spinning it idly between calloused fingers. "The new lot from the docks. They blow wrong every time. You'd think they were calling ducks." The others laugh, that harsh camaraderie born from sleepless nights. A fringe tidbit floats up as you watch. In some towns, particularly in 15th century France, guards were fined if they blew their whistles incorrectly. A wrong rhythm could start a panic or summon reinforcements unnecessarily. Imagine explaining that to your superior. "Sorry, I just panicked and accidentally called the entire militia." But beneath the laughter, you sense something heavier. The whistle isn't just a signal, it's a symbol of authority. And like all symbols, it can corrupt. You've heard whispers, stories of officials selling counterfeit whistles to thieves who use them to impersonate guards and rob travelers under the illusion of law. The perfect medieval con, the sound of order, disguising chaos. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread or exaggerated by fearful townsfolk. But either way, the idea lingers, that power, once encoded in sound, can be stolen with a single breath. You slip down a side street, following another echo, a slower, lower tone. The buildings widen here, giving way to a courtyard. A group of children are playing, tossing pebbles into puddles and mimicking the guard signals with whistles carved from reed. Their laughter is bright, defiant, unafraid. They're learning power in miniature. One little boy, maybe 7, blows too hard and nearly swallows his reed. You stifle a laugh as he coughs dramatically. "You'll never be captain with lungs like that," his sister teases. The scene feels timeless. Authority always starts as imitation. You imagine those same children growing up to command battalions, their childish notes turned into orders that decide lives. The sky above darkens further, the moon smothered by clouds. Somewhere, a bell tolls 9. Doors slam shut, shutters close, and suddenly the streets are empty except for you and the echoes. curfew. Even sound begins to hold its breath. You duck beneath an archway and spot a shadow moving in the distance, someone sprinting, cloak flaring. Then the sharp blast of a whistle. 1, 2, 3. A chase. The rhythm quickens, bouncing off the walls like heartbeat and drumbeat combined. You feel your pulse match it instinctively. The guards' boots strike the cobblestones, their whistles signaling back and forth, each tone coded with direction and intent. It's chaos, orchestrated through breath. You press yourself against the wall as they rush past, the fugitive silhouette disappearing down a drainage path. The last whistle shrieks like a wounded bird. Silence follows. In the quiet that lingers, you think about how fragile order really is, how a single misplaced note could mean disaster. You picture Tomas's careful hands and wonder how many whistles he made for men like these, for guards who might never think of the artisan behind their authority. You pull out your own whistle, running your thumb along the smooth grain. The temptation to blow it grows unbearable. You imagine the sound slicing through this curfew-drenched night, commanding attention you don't deserve. You almost do it. Almost. Then you remembered Tomas's words. Every traveler should carry one, not use one. Maybe it's a charm. Maybe it's protection. You tuck it back in your pocket. As you continue walking, you realize that medieval cities were symphonies of warning. Bells for time, horns for danger, whistles for command. And just like modern notifications, they shaped behavior. A whistle meant move. A bell meant pray. A drum meant hide. You wonder how many people mistook one for another and what it cost them. The smell of smoke thickens. You turn a corner and see a small crowd gathered near a burning cart. The guards are there again, blowing whistles to keep order, their rhythm steady even as the flames roar. Citizens obey, scattering like leaves on the wind. You watch the choreography of panic and control, of human voices drowned beneath metallic breath. One guard steps too close, his whistle slipping from his fingers. It lands near your feet, dented but intact. Without thinking, you pick it up. It's warm, heavier than Tomas's creation, its edge marked with tiny teeth marks, habit, maybe, anxiety. You hand it back, and the guard nods gratefully before returning to the chaos. The whistle shrieks again, commanding obedience. You step back, letting the scene fade into smoke and distance. The city exhales around you, the air pulsing with layers of meaning, warning, discipline, fear. And somewhere in that fabric, faint but certain, you can still hear Tomas's gentler tone, the sound made not for control, but for connection. You walk on, realizing that every whistle in this city has two halves, the maker and the wielder, creation and command. Breath becomes power, and power always carries an echo of the one who first shaped it. Above you, the moon peeks through the clouds, pale and round, like a silent mouth. The smell of smoke fades behind you as the night opens up, revealing the spire of the cathedral ahead, its windows flickering with the faint gold of candlelight like 1,000 watchful eyes. You follow the echo of singing that drifts through the air, Latin syllables bending, trembling, floating through the fog. The sound feels cleaner here, sacred somehow. And yet, somewhere beneath it, another tone slivens, a softer, more playful whistle, rising and falling in rhythm with the chant. You smile. Even holiness has a sense of humor. The great doors are open just enough for you to slip inside. The air changes instantly, cool, dry, and tinged with wax and incense. Rows of candles line the nave, dripping in quiet devotion.
The choir is rehearsing near the altar, their voices weaving in disciplined harmony, every note measured against the vaulted acoustics. But there, behind them, in the shadows, you spot another figure. Thin, bent, and entirely out of place. A whistle-maker, unmistakably. He's tuning something that looks halfway between a recorder and a bone flute, its surface carved with tiny crosses. He tests it, one note, high and pure, vibrating through the cathedral's ribs like a ghost brushing its fingers along the rafters. No one scolds him. In fact, one of the choir boys turns, nods approvingly, and adjusts his pitch accordingly. You step closer, watching the old craftsman's hands. They're steady but trembling, as if time itself respects his precision. His hair is white, his robe patched. You notice that his instrument case bears symbols both religious and less so. Spirals, eyes, crescent moons, the kind of markings that make bishops nervous. A mainstream historical fact whispers in your mind. The church once commissioned entire families of craftsmen to build instruments for choirs and processions, whistles, flutes, and pipes designed to mimic angelic voices. Some monasteries even had their own instrument workshops where monks shaped sound as prayer. Sacred music wasn't just sung, it was engineered. But here's the twist. The same whistles that sang hymns in cathedrals were also used, after hours, in taverns and festivals, sometimes by the same hands. You can almost picture it. This very craftsman slipping from the holy hush of the nave into a noisy alehouse where the same notes that called angels might summon dancers. You edge closer, and he glances up. "You're not from here," he says softly, his accent a strange blend of regions. I tell him I met another whistlemaker. Tomas. He chuckles. "Ah, the young one. Still carving beauty out of bone, is he?" His tone carries both pride and envy. "We all start with beauty. Then the church teaches us restraint." He gestures toward the choir. "They think sound is purity. I say sound is hunger. Both start in the chest, don't they?" You nod, though you're not entirely sure you understand. He holds out the instrument. "Go on. Listen." You lean in as he plays a scale, low to high, gentle to piercing. The air shimmers. The candles nearest the altar flicker, reacting as if to wind that isn't there. The vibration feels physical, brushing your skin like the edge of a sigh. "Sound travels differently here," he murmurs. "The stone remembers prayers. Sometimes, if you blow just right, you can wake one up." And now comes your fringe tidbit. Medieval whistle-makers, especially those who supplied churches, often claimed that certain instruments could call back lost voices. It wasn't necromancy, not officially, more like tuning in to divine resonance, a superstition cloaked in theology. Some monasteries even had their own instrument workshops, where monks shaped sound as prayer. Sacred music wasn't just sung, it was engineered. But here's the twist. The same whistles that sang hymns in cathedrals were also used, after hours, in taverns and festivals, sometimes by the same hands. You can almost picture it, this very craftsman slipping from the holy hush of the nave into a noisy alehouse where the same notes that called angels might summon dancers. As he gathers his tools, you take in the architecture, the ribs of the ceiling rising like a whale's skeleton, the flicker of votive candles painting halos on cold marble. Every surface here feels designed for sound. Even silence has structure. You imagine hundreds of whistles being tested here over centuries, each note swallowed by the stone, layered like dust on dust. Historians still argue whether sacred and secular whistle-making were ever truly separate.
Some believe the same makers crafted for both altar and alley, switching symbols depending on the buyer. Others claim there were secret rivalries, guilds split by faith, artisans excommunicated for shaping unholy tones. No one agrees, because no one listened closely enough before the echoes faded. The old craftsman interrupts your thoughts. "Do you know what makes a holy sound?" he asks. You shake your head. "Control," he says. "Not faith, not purity, just control." He plays a note so pure you forget to breathe. Lose that, and even angels sound drunk. He laughs, a soft rasping sound, and begins to pack his tools. The choir continues their chant, rising toward some invisible crescendo. But before he leaves, he leans close. "Down the hill, you'll find the other half of the song," he whispers, "where the saints' music goes to drink." You know what that means before he even says it. The tavern. You exit through the cathedral's side door, stepping into the night again. The air is thicker now, laced with laughter and the faint, off-key tune of someone's badly played whistle. The sacred bleeds seamlessly into the profane. As you descend toward the lower streets, the sounds shift. Chant gives way to chatter, bells to mugs clinking. You follow the smell of hops and roasting meat until the tavern appears, a squat building leaning against the hillside, its windows fogged with breath and ale. Inside, it's chaos. The floorboards groan under the weight of bodies and stories. Musicians perch on barrels, their instruments gleaming with sweat and candlelight. And yes, there they are. Whistles. Dozens of them. Wood, tin, clay. Their tones overlap in messy, joyful rebellion. You slide onto a bench, feeling the vibration of a low whistle through the wood beneath your elbows. The musician, a woman with copper hair and a grin that knows too much, winks at you as she plays. Her whistle's tone is rougher than the cathedral's, raw and human. Between breaths, she tosses a joke to a nearby drinker. "This one's for St. Bartholomew. May he forgive the key change." The crowd laughs, raising their mugs. You realize something both obvious and profound. The whistlemaker's art didn't belong to the church or the streets. It belonged to breath itself, to whoever dared to use it. You can't help but join in when the chorus hits. You whistle, not perfectly, not beautifully, but enough. The crowd cheers, and the woman points at you and laughs. "Another pilgrim found his lungs." You grin back, cheeks flushed, the whistle Tomas gave you still safe in your pocket. For a moment, you're part of the oldest duet in the world. Control and chaos, sacred and profane. When the music finally dies down, you step outside, the cool night hitting your face like a benediction. From the cathedral hill above, a faint hymn still drifts down, intertwining with the tavern's fading melody. The city hums between them, a harmony built from contradictions. You look up toward the spire, then down toward the river, and realize that every whistle in this world is a bridge between the divine and the dirty, between silence and the living. And as you walk along the darkened street, you think, maybe that's what holiness really is. A note that refuses to stay where it's told.
The laughter from the tavern fades behind you, swallowed by the quiet breath of the sleeping city. You follow the cobbled road uphill again, the same way you came, except now your ears are sharpened. You can tell the difference between the echo of a shutter closing and the sigh of a stray cat. Everything feels alive with memory, vibrating faintly under the skin of the night. Somewhere above, the cathedral bells mark midnight, a soft chime rolling down the hill like warm smoke. You find yourself before a heavy wooden door you hadn't noticed earlier, plain, unmarked, but with the faintest etching of a spiral at its center. You push it gently, and it opens without protest.
The air inside smells like wax and ink and secrecy. You step into a chamber lit by a handful of oil lamps. The walls are lined with scrolls and small carvings, most depicting instruments, flutes, horns, whistles of every imaginable kind. And seated around a long oak table are half a dozen people, men and women alike, dressed not as nobles or priests, but as artisans. Their hands are rough, their eyes sharp. A guild meeting. They turn to look at you, not startled, more like assessing whether you belong. One of them, a woman with streaks of soot across her cheek, gestures for you to close the door. "You're late," she says dryly, though you both know you weren't invited. You take a seat anyway. No one stops you. The atmosphere is thick, heavy, with the scent of molten metal and something older. Trust, maybe, or the careful absence of it. A mainstream historical fact hums in your memory. Medieval guilds weren't just unions, they were secretive fraternities, guarding trade knowledge with the intensity of alchemists. Sworn oaths, coded marks, even clandestine rituals were common, especially in crafts involving sound and metallurgy. For whistlemakers, that secrecy made sense. Their designs could mean the difference between harmony and havoc. The woman at the head of the table, clearly the master, taps her finger against a brass whistle, the sound echoing softly. Reports from York. Counterfeits again. Poor tone, bad balance. They say it's our mark. Murmurs ripple through the room. You recognize the same frustration Tomas had hinted at, the fear that imitation will destroy the craft from within. Another artisan, older, with hands like knotty roots, grumbles, "Let the guards hang the fakers. We've better things to do." But the master shakes her head. "It's not just fakes, it's theft. Someone is selling our tuning diagrams to foreign guilds." You can almost feel the tension crackle, as if the very air resents betrayal. You watch as one man pulls a folded parchment from his vest and spreads it out, a drawing of a whistle design more intricate than any you've seen. Layers of etching spiral through the metal body, tiny holes in mathematically precise alignment. "This is the master pattern," he says quietly, "lost 3 winters ago." Historians still argue whether guilds like this actually existed or whether they were mythic exaggerations of simple trade associations, but the evidence, found in old charters, marginal notes, and whispered rumors, suggests that at least some craftsmen guarded their secrets as fiercely as magicians did their spells. The master looks around the room. Someone talked. The silence feels sculpted. You hear your own breath loud in your ears. Finally, the soot-streaked woman leans forward. "It isn't us, but it will be if we don't act." She takes a small object from her pocket, a whistle no larger than a thimble, made of blackened silver. "We mark the real ones. From tonight on, every whistle leaving this hall will bear a second sound, one only we can hear." You frown. "How can you—" "Frequency beyond hearing," she interrupts, eyes glittering. "Only the trained ear can catch it, and the guild will teach that ear." You realize this isn't just craftsmanship, it's control of sound itself, a secret frequency binding a brotherhood of makers. She passes the whistle around. When it reaches you, it hums faintly in your palm, like the soft buzz of a bee trapped inside. You raise it to your lips and blow gently. Nothing. Silence. But you feel the vibration in your jaw, deep and private, as though the sound has slipped beneath your hearing and settled in your bones. A few guild members exchange approving looks. The master nods slightly. He hears it. You open your mouth to protest that you don't belong here, but something stops you. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's awe. Or maybe you've simply inhaled too much of this room's conspiratorial air. The guild disperses in pairs, whispering about apprentices, shipments, and trade routes. The master stays behind, studying you. "You're not one of us," she says at last. "No, I admit, but I want to understand." She smirks. "Understanding's expensive." You glance at the scrolls stacked by the wall. Some are diagrams, others coded letters. One has a list of names crossed out. Is this about money? You ask. Always starts that way, but ends in power. The one who controls sound controls order. Remember that. She slides a piece of parchment toward you. An oath, written in looping script. You skim it. Words like silence, breath, loyalty. We don't need new members, she adds, but sometimes sound chooses its own echo. You hesitate, feeling the hum of the secret whistle still vibrating in your chest. What happens if I refuse? She smiles faintly. Then you'll forget. Eventually. You're not sure if that's threat or prophecy. A faint knock interrupts the tension. The soot-streaked woman pokes her head in. Patrol's outside, she whispers. The master nods, then extinguishes one lamp after another until the room is dim and secret again. When you leave, the night feels different, charged. You half expect to hear their hidden frequency lingering in the air, but all you catch is the wind between buildings and the faint drip of rain from rooftops. Still, something in you hums quietly, the echo of an oath you didn't take. A fringe tidbit surfaces as you walk. In some medieval guilds, members believed they shared a collective spirit, a literal sound or vibration that linked them across distance. When one died, others claimed to hear a faint whistle in their sleep, signaling another craftsman's departure. Romantic nonsense, perhaps, but tonight, you could almost believe it. You wander back through the silent streets, fingers brushing the whistle in your pocket, wondering whether Tomas was part of that guild once, whether he left willingly or vanished like one of those crossed-out names. The rain begins again, soft and rhythmic, like the world tuning itself back into balance. You think about how power always starts as something beautiful, art, music, skill, and then, quietly, turns into hierarchy. The same sound that once united people now divides them. And yet, in some strange way, you feel honored to have heard it. The guild's secret tone, the hum of a lost brotherhood. You stop at a fountain, the same one from your first night here. The water ripples as raindrops fall, each one making a tiny ring of sound. You lift your whistle and blow gently. Not a command, not a warning, just a note. Soft, steady. For a second, you think you hear another faint answer in the distance, too low for normal ears. Or maybe it's just your imagination, your bones remembering the frequency. Either way, it makes you smile. The morning light creeps back into the world, and you find yourself standing outside the city gates, boots damp with dew and head still full of echoes. The whistle rests heavy in your pocket, a secret relic that hums faintly when the wind passes. You tell yourself it's just air trapped inside the hollowed chamber, nothing supernatural. But deep down, you know it's humming to something older, something buried in the bones of the world. You start walking toward the edge of town, following the smoke rising from a cluster of small forges beyond the walls. Here, the city's pulse changes. The streets smell of charcoal and melted brass. Men and women hammer at anvils, blow air through bellows, and stir vats of cloudy resin. These are not the performers or the patrons of music. They're its architects, shaping the raw stuff of sound. You step into one of the open workshops, drawn by the warm hiss of molten metal. The master here is a thick-armed man named Auric, whose beard has collected more filings than some tool benches. He's polishing a length of copper tubing, his fingers blackened with soot but moving like a musician's. "Looking for Tomas?" he asks without looking up. You blink. "You know him?" Auric chuckles. Knew him. Everyone in the trade did. He had an ear for the impossible tones, used to say every metal had a soul, Most of us thought he was just poetic, until his whistles started to sing back. You lean closer to the bench, watching Auric pour molten brass into a mold shaped like a small flute. The liquid gold glows for a moment, then begins to cool, hardening into a promise. The room fills with the scent of metal and damp earth. He gestures for you to sit. You want to understand whistle makers? You start with what they built from: bone, bronze, and betrayal. You raise an eyebrow. Betrayal? He grins. You'll see. He picks up a thin piece of bone, curved and hollow. This one's deer femur. Strong, light, good resonance. The earliest whistles, pre-guild, pre-cathedral, were all bone. Hunters used them to call hawks or to emulate prey. But musicians soon realized bone carries tone differently. Warmer, softer, a bit mournful. He holds it to the light, and for a moment it looks translucent. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your thoughts. Many medieval instruments, especially small wind devices, were indeed made from animal bone, often sheep or bird. Archaeologists have found fragments across Europe, their finger holes still smooth from centuries of touch. Some were ceremonial, others practical. Auric continues, but once the church got involved, once they wanted instruments for processions and psalms, bone became complicated, too pagan, too flesh. So the masters turned to metal. He moves to another bench where rows of whistles lie like sleeping insects, copper, silver, even a few made of polished bronze. Bronze carried the voice of angels, they said. Easier to clean, too, but expensive. Only guild masters could afford it. You pick one up. It's heavy for its size, etched with tiny circles that form almost a floral pattern. When you blow, it produces a clear, piercing tone that feels both holy and a bit smug. Aura chuckles. That one's from the Cathedral series. Everyone tuned to a specific note used in Mass. Whistle makers were commissioned by bishops, sometimes even by kings. But here's the funny bit. He lowers his voice conspiratorially. Some of those bronze whistles, they were melted down from church bells that cracked in storms, recast into instruments small enough to fit in a pocket. Think about that. The same metal that once called the faithful, now calling the hounds. You can't help but laugh softly. Recycling, medieval style. He winks. Exactly. Historians still argue whether those bell-born whistles were considered sacred or cursed. Depends who you ask. I think they just sounded better. You trace your fingers over the etched circles again, and the metal feels warm, as if remembering the fire it came from. But Auric isn't done. He lifts a small box from under the bench, unwrapping a piece of cloth inside. What rests there is darker, less refined, a whistle carved from what looks suspiciously like human bone. You hesitate. Please tell me that's not... Oh, it is, he says without apology. Old piece. Might have been ceremonial, might have been personal. You see, when a master died, his apprentices sometimes made a whistle from his remains, said it kept his breath alive in the guild. You blink, half horrified, half fascinated. That's intimate. He laughs. That's polite for creepy. But listen. He lifts it to his lips and blows. The sound that comes out is low, almost inaudible, but it seems to vibrate the air around you. Not pretty, haunting, like a sigh traveling through centuries. You rub your arms against the chill that creeps in. Betrayal, you murmur. Auric nods. Because every craft that touches the sacred eventually crosses a line. The guild thought they could channel life itself through sound, but sound's not loyal. It carries whatever you breathe into it, truth or lie, prayer or curse. He puts the whistle back in its cloth, carefully. That's why the guild fractured. Half wanted purity, metal, math, divine ratios. The others wanted flesh, warmth, soul. And in the end, both were right, and both lost. You imagine those divisions spreading through workshops like cracks in cooling bronze. Apprentices choosing sides, masters vanishing, secrets traded for gold. Outside, the day has brightened. Through the open door, you can hear children playing, their laughter high and shrill like tiny flutes. The world moves on, unaware of the materials it's built upon. Auric wipes his hands on his apron. You'll find Tomas's last work up north in the hills. He went there chasing some new alloy, a blend that could sing in 2 tones at once. Never came back. You nod, though your mind lingers on that bone whistle. A fringe tidbit drifts up from some forgotten corner of lore. Certain medieval craftsmen believed bones carried memories of sound, the echo of life imprinted in their structure. Some modern researchers have even tested this idea, finding that bone channels vibration differently than wood or metal, producing eerie harmonic distortions. You thank Auric and step back into the light. The road ahead winds through fields where mist clings low, silvered by the morning sun. You take out the silver whistle the guildmaster gave you and blow a gentle note. This time, it harmonizes faintly with the ringing from Auric's forge, 2 tones overlapping like conversation. It's a small miracle, and you smile at the absurdity of it. Maybe you're imagining things, or maybe the whistle really does carry its own will, eager to be heard again after centuries of silence. As you walk, the sound fades, but the idea lingers, that every material carries its story, waiting for breath to wake it up. Metal remembers fire, bone remembers life, and sound remembers everything. The path rises, and behind you, the city shrinks to a shimmer of rooftops. You breathe in the cool air, scented with soot, grass, and secrets. Somewhere ahead lies Tomas's final experiment, and maybe, just maybe, an answer to the hum you still feel beneath your ribs.
The road north twists like a question you can't quite answer. Hills roll beneath your boots, covered in the pale gold of half-harvested fields. The city's hum has fallen behind, replaced by the softer sounds of wind, sparrows, and your own breathing. Occasionally, you raise the silver whistle to your lips and blow a tentative note, just to keep the silence from swallowing you whole. Each time, the sound flutters out, lonely, but alive. After an hour or 2, you reach a cluster of tents pitched near the ruins of a watchtower. The smell of smoke and boiled oats greets you before the sight of soldiers does. Their armor glints dully in the sun, unpolished and practical. A few of them glance your way, eyes tired but curious. Travelers aren't common in this borderland. You approach a guard sharpening his sword on a whetstone. "I'm looking for a man named Tomas," you say. "Whistle-maker." The soldier looks up, his expression softening. "Aye, he was with us for a while. Didn't talk much, always carving something. You'll find his hut past the ridge." He pauses, then adds, "You'll hear it before you see it." You thank him and continue up the slope. The wind grows harsher, bringing with it the faint rhythm of short, sharp whistles. Signals, not songs. The pattern repeats. Pause. Repeats again. It's a language you can almost feel rather than understand. When you crest the hill, you see them. A line of soldiers drilling in formation, their movements coordinated not by shouts but by sound. A man stands on a boulder above them, blowing commands through a bronze whistle. 1 note, they march. 2, they halt. 3, formation shift. The efficiency is startling. You realize this is what Tomas had been working on, the military whistle system. And as you watch the soldiers pivot in perfect unison, it hits you how much power hides inside something so small. A mainstream historical fact whispers through your memory. During the medieval and early modern periods, armies indeed used whistles and horns to signal maneuvers on chaotic battlefields. When voices were drowned by clashing metal and screams, a single shrill note could mean life or death. Some of the earliest documented use of signal whistles appears in 14th century Italian militias and later in naval fleets. You walk closer, catching the eye of the whistler on the rock. He lowers his instrument, and the troops stop mid-motion. "Visitor?" he calls, his voice gravelly. "I was told Thomas worked here." You reply. He jumps down, landing with a soft grunt. "He did. Brilliant man. Strange ideas, though. Said sound could save lives, or end them." He wipes sweat from his brow. "He built these." The captain hands you a whistle, bronze, heavier than yours, etched with faint concentric lines that glint in the sunlight. He said, "Each one carries its own temper. Some calm men, some drive them forward. I don't know about that, but they do cut through the noise." You examine it closely. Where is he now? The captain hesitates, his eyes drifting toward the northern horizon. "Went looking for a purer tone. Said the metal here was too anxious." You almost laugh. "Metal gets anxious?" He smirks. "That's what he said. Then again, most geniuses sound mad right before they disappear." You pocket the bronze whistle and linger by the troops. As they resume drills, you begin to understand Thomas's obsession. Sound here isn't art, it's survival. One clear signal could mean retreat or charge. A wrong note could lead to disaster. Historians still argue whether such signaling systems were truly standardized or more improvised. Some believe each army, even each commander, developed its own acoustic code. Simple, functional, and impossible for enemies to decipher. Others claim these systems were mythologized later, exaggerated by chroniclers hungry for drama. But as you watch the soldiers move with precision born of sound alone, it's hard to imagine this is fiction. Every blast carries intention, authority, and trust. Then, suddenly, chaos breaks the rhythm. One soldier stumbles, another mishears a command, and the formation splinters. The captain blows his whistle again, sharper, but the confusion only spreads. You hear different pitches overlapping, panic, command, defiance. The language of sound turned against itself. You run forward instinctively, covering your ears as a whistle shrieks inches from your head. The noise slices through the air like a blade, disorienting. When it stops, the silence feels heavier than the sound ever did. "False echo," the captain mutters. "Happens sometimes. Wind bends the note, carries it wrong." You nod, though something about his tone tells you he doesn't believe his own words. Later, when the camp settles, you sit by the fire and listen to the men talk. They speak of the way whistles sound different before dawn, how the same metal can betray its maker depending on the temperature, how sometimes, in thick fog, a note will come back distorted, like the field itself is answering. You turn the bronze whistle in your hands, feeling its weight. Maybe Thomas did find something dangerous here. The captain joins you, passing a flask. "He said war wasn't about swords or banners. It was about who controlled the air between men." He looks toward the flames. "We laughed at him. Now I'm not so sure." You take a sip, bitter, smoky. "Did he leave anything behind?" The captain nods toward a tent at the edge of camp. "His journals. You can look if you're careful." You slip inside after the soldiers drift to sleep. The tent smells of parchment and oil. On a small table, lit by a dying candle, lies a stack of papers filled with sketches, rows of whistles, notes on frequencies,
strange notations like equations for music. One entry catches your eye. If command can ride on breath, so can mercy. If war can be spoken through sound, perhaps peace can too. You close the book gently, feeling a mix of admiration and sadness. Maybe Thomas's dream was too gentle for the times. Outside, the wind carries faint whistle tones again. Someone practicing, or maybe just the night playing tricks. You lift your own silver whistle and answer softly. The two notes meet mid-air, swirl, and dissolve. A fringe tidbit drifts through your mind. During the Crusades, some chroniclers wrote of angelic horns heard in the sky before battle. Later scholars dismiss these as natural acoustics or mass hysteria, but it's fascinating how humans always try to frame sound as message. Whether from heaven, hell, or another camp, it's always someone trying to be heard. You lie down under the stars, cloak wrapped tight, the whistle pressed against your chest. The fire crackles. The night hums. You think about Thomas, somewhere out there, chasing the pure tone, the sound that could command peace instead of war. And in your half-dreaming state, you swear you hear it too. A soft note, distant yet perfect, cutting through the wind like a promise.
By the time you wake, the soldiers are gone. The camp has been dismantled, fires doused, and footprints already half faded by morning mist. You lie there for a moment, staring at the empty field, listening for even one stray whistle. But there's only wind, playing its own careless tune. You pack your things and head south again, the whistle in your pocket strangely silent, as if mourning. The road feels longer on the way back. Villages flicker by, each one quieter, each one with fewer signs of the craft that once filled them. The closer you get to the city, the louder everything else becomes. The clatter of carts, the iron clanging of forges, the distant grind of wheels turning. Industry has found its rhythm, and it doesn't leave much room for art. By the time you reach the gates, it's dusk again, the sky streaked with red. Inside, the market square is different from before. Gone are the street performers and tinkerers. Now heavy wagons unload crates stamped with factory marks. Whistles mass-produced. Tin, not bronze. Hollow, not tuned. You pick one up from a vendor's stall. It's crude, lightweight, uniform, stamped with a logo instead of a craftsman's mark. You blow into it, and the sound that emerges is thin and sharp, more noise than note. The vendor shrugs. People don't care about tone anymore, he says, as long as it's loud. That single sentence hits harder than you expect. A mainstream historical fact flickers across your memory. By the late 18th and early 19th centuries, industrialization had nearly erased small-scale instrument makers. Mechanized molds replaced apprentices. Uniformity replaced nuance. Crafts like bell-making, lute carving, and yes, whistle forging faded into obscurity, victims of efficiency. You hand a tin whistle back and continue through the crowd. Every corner hums with the rhythm of machines. A steam hammer pounds in the distance, syncing perfectly with your heartbeat. Even the air feels metallic. You duck into a familiar alley, the one that once led to Tomas's workshop. Only now, the sign above the door is gone and the windows are dark. When you push the door open, dust swirls up like startled ghosts. The workbench remains, tools scattered as if he'd left in the middle of a thought. A half-finished whistle lies there, its surface rough, mouthpiece unpolished. You run your thumb along it. It's warm, even after all this time. On the wall, his old sketches are still pinned up. Diagrams of curves, measurements, and annotations in his looping script. One note reads, "Sound will outlast the hand that makes it." You exhale slowly. "You will write," you whisper to the empty room. A faint clinking sound interrupts you.
metal tapping against wood. You turn to see an old man crouched by the forge, sorting through a box of scrap. His hair is white and wild, but his eyes are alert. "Didn't think anyone remembered this place," he says. "You one of his?" I shake my head. "Just curious." He nods, returning to his rummaging. "Curiosity's all that's left now. Craft's dead. Machines do the breathing for us." As you watch him lift a small brass whistle, wipe it clean and blow a slow note, the sound is rough but deep, richer than the factory ones outside. "Still sings," he murmurs. You step closer. "Were you part of the guild?" He laughs softly. "Once, before the guild stopped being a brotherhood and started being a memory. We tried to keep up with the times, made patterns, sold rights to factories, but they didn't want soul. They wanted units." "Did Tomas know?" "He knew everything. He warned us, said mass sound would drown meaning, that once every street had a whistle, no one would listen anymore." Historians still argue whether the decline of small crafts was inevitable or engineered, whether industrial progress truly improved life or just standardized it beyond recognition. Some claim artisanship simply couldn't survive in a world obsessed with replication. Others argue it could have adapted if only pride hadn't stood in the way. You look around the dusty workshop, the faint traces of both brilliance and stubbornness clinging to every surface. Maybe both sides were right. The old man sighs. The guild's archives were seized when the city restructured. Most of the old patterns burned. They said they were outdated, dangerous even. Imagine that, calling sound dangerous. I smile faintly. "I can imagine." He tilts his head. "You've got one of his, don't you?" I hesitate, then nod and show him the silver whistle. The old man's eyes widen slightly. "Ah, the harmonic. He finished it then." I frown. "You mean this one?" He said he was working on something that could hold two notes, one for the world, one for the soul. Only the listener would know which they were hearing. You lift it to your lips and blow gently. The sound that emerges is hauntingly beautiful, resonant and layered. For a moment, the air itself seems to shimmer. The old man closes his eyes, smiling through what might be tears. "That's him. That's Tomas." You lower the whistle, heart racing. It's still alive." He nods. "Every true whistle is. That's why machines can't replace us. They can copy shape, but not breath." You both stand in silence, the faint hum of the city seeping through the cracks in the walls. It's a strange harmony, old and new, craft and machine, fading and enduring. A fringe tidbit flickers through your mind. In some industrial towns, workers would blow their factory whistles in improvised melodies during shift changes, unknowingly creating the first forms of industrial folk music. It was the machine's accidental way of singing back to the humans who'd built them. You smile at the thought. Maybe the craft isn't entirely gone, just transformed. Maybe the sound has merely changed costume. The old man packs his things and shuffles toward the door. "Keep it safe," he says, nodding to your whistle. "Not because it's rare, because it remembers." When he's gone, you stay for a long while. You trace Tomas's notes, feel the faint warmth of old tools, and listen to the city outside. Every clank and hiss and whistle feels like an echo of something older, something human. You finally step back into the street where the air smells of iron and rain. The factories hum like organs, their steam pipes exhaling long, mournful chords. You raise your whistle and add your own small note to the mix. It's swallowed almost instantly, but that's okay. You're not trying to be heard anymore. You're just trying to belong to the soundscape that once belonged to you.
And as the wind carries your tone across the rooftops, you swear it blends perfectly with the great mechanical chorus of the modern world.
You leave the city behind again, not because you're running, but because the air there has grown too loud. Out here in the countryside, the world still breathes. The grass sways in unison with the wind's soft hum, and birds whistle in the branches, their calls like half-remembered lessons from a gentler teacher. You're following a rumor this time, word of a new kind of craftsman. Not a maker, but a rediscoverer. Someone who collects sounds the way monks once collected manuscripts. They call themselves echo hunters. The first you meet is in a small village built around a dried-up riverbed. Her name is Marin, and she works in a shed that smells of cedar and beeswax. The walls are covered with strange instruments, recording horns, tuning forks, and tiny metal tubes suspended from strings. She greets you like an old friend who's been gone too long. "You've got it with you," she says immediately, pointing at your pocket. You nod, handing over the silver whistle. She cradles it like a newborn. "One of the late harmonic models," she murmurs, reverent. You can still see the maker's etchings beneath the oxidation. Exquisite. You watch her set it on a wooden table where sunlight filters through a dusty window. "You study them?" you ask. "I listen to them," she replies simply. "Every whistle keeps an imprint of its last true note. I try to coax it out." She holds the whistle to her ear and hums softly, her pitch rising and falling like she's searching for a key. Then suddenly she stops, eyes wide. "It still vibrates." "That's rare." You blink. "What does that mean?" "It means," she says, smiling faintly, "that whoever made it, or whoever it remembers, isn't entirely gone." A shiver crawls down your spine. A mainstream historical fact surfaces in your mind. In the early 20th century, the field of acoustic archaeology emerged, scientists studying the shapes and residues of ancient instruments to reconstruct their original sounds. Researchers even analyzed grooves on pottery, theorizing that vibrations from music might have been accidentally recorded into the clay during shaping. Sound, fossilized. Marin gestures for you to sit. "You're not the first to come with one of these," she says. "Historians, collectors, dreamers, they all want the lost tones, but they forget that sound isn't just vibration, it's breath. If you want to hear it, you have to give something of yourself." I raise an eyebrow. "That sounds like witchcraft." She grins. "Close enough." She takes out a small hand-cranked phonograph, its horn polished to a dull gleam. "This is how we record echoes," she says. "The whistle sings into this, and whatever's left, whatever memory clings to it, plays back. Sometimes it's just noise. Sometimes," she glances at you, "sometimes it's voices." You lean in, half skeptical, half enchanted. "Let's try." She nods, winding the crank. The mechanism hums softly, the wax cylinder spinning. She raises the silver whistle and blows, gentle, sustained. The note blooms in the air, shimmering like heat over water. For a moment, it feels as if the entire room is breathing in rhythm with it. Then she stops. The machine continues to spin, she flips a lever, and the recorded sound begins to play back. At first, it's faint, the same note but distant, frayed at the edges. Then, layered beneath it, you hear something else, a second tone, lower, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Then, impossibly, a whisper. "Still here." You freeze. Marin doesn't flinch. "That happens sometimes," she says, voice hushed. "Resonant frequencies can mimic words. Or maybe..." She lets the thought hang. I swallow hard. "Maybe what?" She meets your eyes. "Maybe sound doesn't die. Maybe it waits." You don't respond. You can't. Instead, you listen as the wax cylinder winds down, the voice fading into static, leaving behind a silence so profound it feels sacred. Marin turns the handle again, resetting the device.
There are others like me, she says, after a while. All over Europe, they find pieces of the past, pipes from monasteries, signal horns from battlefields, children's toys carved from bone. Each one still hums. We're trying to map them, to recreate the medieval soundscape. You smile faintly. Like a sonic atlas. She nods. Exactly. But it's more than history. It's memory. The air remembers everything. It just needs the right key to unlock it. Historians still argue whether such acoustic recovery is possible. Some dismiss it as pseudoscience. Others see potential. One scholar famously said that if the right algorithm were invented, we could one day hear the Middle Ages again, not through imagination, but through recovered vibration. The thought both thrills and unsettles you. Before you leave, Marin presses something into your hand. A small recording disc, she says, for when you forget the sound. Play it on any phonograph, but only once. You thank her and head toward the coast, where rumor says another echo hunter works among the cliffs. The road curves through wind-carved valleys. You stop often, listening to the breeze as it winds through stone fissures like an ancient choir. When you finally find the cliffside hut, its door hangs open. Inside, shelves are stacked with relics, rusted whistles, cracked flutes, even small church bells half sunk in sand. A man sits by the window, headphones pressed against his ears, nodding faintly. He gestures for you to join him. I've been listening to them, he says, removing the headset. Not just the instruments, the spaces. Every cave, every cathedral, every corridor still holds echoes. You can tell where you are by the way the air bends sound. You sit beside him, gazing out over the sea. The waves crash far below, rhythmic and endless. Ever wonder, he asks, what it felt like to live in a world where silence meant danger and every whistle was a message? You think of Thomas, of the Guild, of Ostrich's bone whistle and the soldiers' calls. I think I do, you say quietly. He smiles. Then you already understand why we hunt. As the sun sets, he plays you a recording, layered sounds from different finds stitched together. At first, it's chaotic, overlapping tones, faint breaths, bits of chant. But gradually, it forms a pattern, a haunting melody that feels both alien and familiar. It's as if the ghosts of whistle makers, priests, and soldiers are all playing together in one vast, unseen orchestra. A fringe tidbit drifts into your mind. Some modern sound artists use algorithms to reconstruct imaginary historical acoustics, blending genuine medieval tones with field recordings. They call it resonance archaeology. One such piece was performed in a London church. Audiences claimed to feel the air vibrate differently, as if the building itself remembered its own past songs. You sit there long after the final note fades, your whistle in hand, the waves below keeping time. Do you think we'll ever recover it fully? You ask. The man shrugs. Recover, no. But we can remember. That's close enough. As the sun sets, the horizon glows faintly blue. The sea wind carries faint high notes, maybe gulls, maybe echoes. Either way, you listen, grateful to still be hearing anything at all. When you finally turn back inland, the silver whistle hums faintly again in your pocket. It doesn't want to be forgotten. Neither do you realize.
You leave the cliffside behind, carrying the faint scent of salt and damp stone in your clothes. The road back winds inland, through forests where sunlight struggles to reach the mossy floor. You notice the subtle changes in sound, the way leaves whisper differently depending on their shape, the way wind hums through hollow logs. Your ears have sharpened. Every tone seems to carry meaning now. Every echo, a story waiting to be interpreted. The silver whistle in your pocket pulses softly, as though eager to speak again. You lift it to your lips and play a tentative note. It vibrates through your chest, not loud enough to be heard far, but enough to remind you of the Guild, of Tomas, of Auric, of Marin, of the echo hunter by the sea. Memory,
resonates in sound. You realize how much of this journey was less about finding whistle makers than about listening, truly listening. You pause at a clearing, the horizon glowing in twilight gold and rose. The landscape feels both empty and crowded, carrying centuries of breath, children calling across valleys, soldiers signaling commands, monks testing notes in a cathedral, craftsmen shaping metal and bone. And through it all, the notes of Tomas's whistle, quiet but insistent, thread the ages together. A mainstream historical fact floats through your mind. Medieval whistle makers were often itinerant, moving between towns, serving guilds, churches, and armies. They weren't just artisans. They were carriers of communication, memory, and subtle power. Their craft shaped lives in ways most people never noticed. You stop to rest, letting the wind cool your flushed face. When you close your eyes, the faint tones of the whistles you've encountered rise in layers. Bronze and bone, metal and breath, sacred and profane. Each sound distinct yet overlapping, creating a living palimpsest of the past. You smile, thinking about the absurdity of it all. Humans making music, making messages, leaving their voices in objects to be discovered centuries later. It feels miraculous, but also inevitable. You pull the whistle from your pocket one last time. Blow gently. The note rises, steady and full. For an instant, you swear it carries a memory of Tomas, of the guild, of the soldiers, of all the echoes you've collected on this journey. You imagine that even the modern whistles in the city, tin and mass-produced, might secretly hum if someone listened closely enough. Historians still argue whether the craft of whistle-making should be considered art, technology, or folklore. Some claim it's lost forever. Others believe it can be reconstructed. Standing there in the twilight, you feel the answer isn't important. The sound is already living in you, and in anyone who remembers to listen. You walk on, down the winding path, carrying the weight of history and resonance in your chest. Occasionally, you stop to hear a bird, a rustle of leaves, a distant church bell, or a child whistling. Each one a reminder. Every note is a bridge across time. Finally, night falls. You camp beneath the solitary tree, the sky an ocean of stars. The wind hums faintly through the branches, carrying the faintest echoes of everything you've heard. The cathedral, the tavern, the forge, the battlefield, the echo hunters, the coast. You pull the whistle to your lips one last time and play a soft, lingering note. It blends with the world perfectly, fading into the night like a sigh. And as you lie back, watching the stars, you understand the profession may be lost, the maker's gone, but the music, the memory of breath, the whisper of bone and bronze persists. It waits in quiet places, in secret chambers, in the listener who still dares to hear. The night stretches around you, soft and forgiving, carrying the memory of every sound you've encountered. The air is cool, scented with pine and earth, the quiet punctuated only by distant rustling or the occasional bird returning home. You feel the weight of the journey slowly lifting, as if the world itself is exhaling alongside you. Your whistle rests lightly in your hand. You blow a note so gentle that it barely disturbs the air, yet you can feel it vibrating through your chest. It is a reminder that history is not only in books or museums, but in subtle, living echoes that persist in the breath of those willing to listen. Each pause, each whisper, each faint melody carries centuries of makers, players, and dreamers. Tomas and Osric, guild members and soldiers, cathedral choristers and tavern revelers. They are all still present, woven into the vibrations of the world.
You let your mind soften, releasing the tension of roads traveled and lessons learned. The images of cathedrals, workshops, hills, and coastlines fold inward, leaving a gentle awareness that the past is always near, not confined to pages, but flowing in air, water, stone, and metal. Each note you heard, every faint echo, has been absorbed into your own rhythm of breath and heartbeat. Even the smallest sound, the clink of a tool, the sigh of wind, the whisper of a distant animal, feels profound now. There is comfort in knowing that though the profession of whistle-making may be lost, its spirit lingers, waiting to be remembered, coaxed forth and carried by those who still pause to listen. You feel the slow pulse of time settling into your bones, as if the world itself is breathing through you. The distant echoes fade, leaving a calm resonance, a quiet companionship, the soft reassurance that you are part of the continuity. Night deepens, the stars steady and patient above, and every shadow seems to hold a faint hum of history. Finally, you close your eyes, letting your imagination drift with the gentle cadence of memory, sound, and quiet understanding. All the echoes of whistlemakers, past and present, swirl around you, a lullaby from another time, a story folded into the air itself. Sleep finds you slowly, easily, with the knowledge that every note you have heard will continue to sing quietly in your mind long after the last breath of the night.